In the end, you have a couple of really smart, very creative people that have crazy ideas. They discuss based on whatever client briefing they get and come out with ideas. And it's like throughout the process, how can you measure if an idea is good or not?
Throughout the process?
Yeah, after the process. How can you say that this is really, really a good advertising? Let's say a TV spot. How can you say it's a good TV spot? You go, maybe you're on a pitch, you come up with a crazy idea and you know it's good. You have a gut feel.
It's DeAndre here, and this is the Pioneers Show, the show where we talk with innovators, makers, entrepreneurs, basically people who are trailing their own trails and creating their own lives so that we all can learn how to work on our own lives. If this is your first time here, thank you for downloading and listening, and I appreciate you taking the time to hear this episode. Subscribe and enjoy listening to the pioneers of today. And if you're a repeat listener, welcome back. This is episode 19, and I'm your host, André de Albuquerque. You can find me at It's DeAndre on Twitter and on Instagram, as well as the show at Pioneers Show on Instagram as well. In this week's episode, we have with us Markus Düttmann. Markus is the product and innovation lead at DCMN, the organizer of this incredible event that is going to be happening next week here in Berlin on the 25th, Scale 18, a conference for growth marketing innovators. There, you will be able to hear more about today's innovation and tomorrow's possibilities with marketing. Going back to Markus, we talk about his past experience studying math and physics, jumping onto machine learning and AI, and then moving to the great world of marketing and advertising. I honestly love the conversation, and I would like to thank DCMN for arranging this interview ahead of Scale 18. Without talking a lot more, let's jump into the conversation with Markus Düttmann.
And here with us, we have Markus. Welcome to the Pioneers Show. How are you?
Hey, Andrew. I'm pretty good today. Feeling good.
For people at home who don't know who you are, care to give us a presentation about yourself?
Well, I can give you a short one. My name is Markus Düttmann. I currently drive product and innovation at DCMN. Weirdly, I got into the field of marketing. I'm actually a trained physicist, theoretical physicist even. I wanted to become a professor. But somehow I ended up in this field. I guess in the last year of my PhD, I got very interested in artificial intelligence. Mm-hmm. It was 2011, 2012. It was pretty fresh, pretty new. And for a young physicist trying to do something great, it was the topic. It's very close to what we have done. And it is, from a mathematical standpoint, one of the most interesting topics still in the industry that I can think of.
So, artificial intelligence specifically?
Artificial intelligence, yeah. I mean, the main idea is, if you think about it, if you're like a student, you have like an interest in mathematics, and well, you kind of like it. You like sitting and calculating, programming a little bit. You know, there's not so many things that you can do that where you reach this high level of mathematics that you have in universities, right? You don't want to do like simple, I don't know, you don't want to do like simple math all your life. You want to be at a certain level, and this is where machine learning, artificial intelligence provides a really good way to make this useful and make cool working things with mathematics.
Okay, so let's start with the physics. You're actually not the first one that I have here in the Pioneers Show that comes from a physics or a theoretical physics background and now is doing something entirely different. I can share with you that the fifth person that I've had on the show, called Marcin, shout out to Marcin, he was studying management at one point, and then he changed into physics, and at one point he was developing algorithms for theoretical econophysics.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have been doing a bit of that as well. It's quite fun.
He said exactly the same thing. It's quite fun, and I always try to understand what's the connection. And from you, what I'll ask is why or how did you come up with the idea of, or why did you want to go into physics? Was it something that you always wanted to do when you were in college or in school? What made you be interested in physics specifically?
Like these interests, they kind of start as a kid. I was pretty good at math. And for me, it's like I have a pretty difficult time concentrating. I'm quite a nervous character, but with mathematics, I have like, it's kind of meditation for me. It always was. I can really focus pretty well. And I always liked it. It was always easy for me. And I actually wanted to study mathematics. So I went to University of Oldenburg, and there was the math day, and there were a couple of people telling like how they became something after studying math. And the first one was like a woman. She was an IT manager somewhere, and it was boring as hell what she told. And then there was another guy who was insurance mathematician, calculating like random things when people will die. And it also didn't sound very attractive to me back in the day. So I started reading up what I can do, what is similar to mathematics, but not mathematics. I mean, I was very inexperienced back in the days. I read a lot about popular science, of physics, of string theory, all that kind of stuff. And so I decided to go into physics. And there I was more on the mathematic heavy side, which I do love. I still do love it. But it was exactly the right decision. Studying physics is awesome. It's super interesting, and it really, really teaches you a lot.
When you say experimental or theoretical, sorry, could you repeat that? Is it experimental physics or theoretical?
No, I was theoretical physics.
Theoretical physics. So what is the application? Is there any application to the day-to-day world that we see in theoretical physics, or is it just theorizing about specific things that you can do in the future? What's the basis?
Well, I mean, I have worked in different areas. So the first time I really worked in a research group was statistical physics. It was about very, very researchy. Let's put it. It was about. I mean, you can actually catch ions in like a laser trap. Like it's really like you would. Imagine it, you have a joystick and you can catch something, move it around. And in the application I was calculating is how when there's like a distortion in the field, this laser trap changes. It was like very mathematical and not very useful for people outside of science. You know, some people use it, but it's very, very abstract. Later in my PhD, I was worked on protein dynamics simulation. We were developing mathematical models that were investigating how proteins use energy to move, to do things. And this is something that will be applicable, not now, but in 5 to 10 years, we will probably have medicine where we manipulate proteins that bring medicine right into the cell at the right position. So this is something very close to the future that we can actually use it. So there's like different fields, different levels of applications that you see when you work in this field.
I think that's very interesting, and I think that I always found physics very interesting, even though I went. In school, I decided to go away from mathematics because I thought I wanted to.
What a pity!
I believe me, it's something that I every day think about. I should have went to mathematics because I remember that in my school, the teachers gave the opportunity for the 4th graders to check the 5th graders class, and that's when you get to science and go into a more specific. And only 3 students in like 7 years chose math, and it's me and 2 friends. And on the 9th grade, I thought I want to be an actor, so I went to a more linguistic approach to eventually go into an actor. And as you can see right now, I'm not being an actor. And every day I say that I should have went to mathematics because it's such an interesting field, and you can see math in everywhere. That's why I always found fascinating. But when you go to physics, I never thought of physics as something, even though it's applicable because everything is physics and everything is math, I never saw physics as something that you can see in the real world. And even though, like you said, there's something there of probably it's interesting for the scientists in the area, right now probably there's no application. But one other thing that I would ask you is, for example, I think it's Elon Musk that says that one of the things that he was very interested was physics in the beginning, and then he creates the first principles to solve any problem. Do you think that for your side, now that you're working in product and innovation and went into marketing, that using some kind of first principle background on physics and theoretical physics, that gives you an advantage nowadays?
I don't exactly know what first principle approach you're talking about, but definitely physics will train you very well in problem solving. So one very practical application of problem solving, like how a physicist would do that. Let's assume we have a super complicated problem, and we look at it and we don't understand. It's almost like it's impossible to get there in a straightforward way. This are problems that as a physicist you would see on a daily basis. This is what you're working on, and this is what you're trained to solve. So how you do it in physics, and this is something that has been very, very successful for me in real life, let's call it marketing real life, is that you just throw away all the complications in the first step. You look at a super simplified model problem, let's call it. And these problems, they're usually very easy to solve. And then you have a solution for the model problem. You sort your problems, and you take one problem after the other, include it in the model, and you will find that most of the problems you saw in the beginning are already solved by you solving the simplified model problems. The other ones are very easy to integrate, and there will be some that you cannot solve with the strategy. But usually in a business context, you're already good enough, and you can just ignore them. They are out of the scope of your problem. And this is like a very powerful and very simple strategy of problem solving that I have learned over the years, that I have like forced in my head. But the first principle approach, if you can tell me a bit more, maybe
Sure.
I can...
The first principle approach is where you look at a situation and strip it down to the first principle of the idea. Let's take electric cars. The first principle would be look at electric cars and try to find the solution from the ground up, build something without any preconception besides the initial model. Let's build an electric vehicle. You can create something different from you see every day. Therefore, you can have something truly disruptive or innovative.
Okay, yeah. It sounds actually very similar, right? You focus on the simple things first and build up on that. Yeah, I like the approach already.
But one of the things that you mentioned, and tell me if you agree, is that clearly there's something there is that even if you didn't have any marketing skills, you clearly had a very powerful, developed, soft/transferable skill, something that you can apply either to marketing, to construction, to anything in the world, probably.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think, fortunately for me, these become more important. Everybody's changing jobs, changing industries, doing something completely different. Transferable skills, will become more and more important. And for me, having changed the things I do several times already, this comes very natural. And I don't know if this has to do with physics, but it's quite an advantage, I would say. I
mean, there's some flexibility there, but probably the physics or the physics background might have given you some flexibility of thought, at least. Since, from what I understand, you were told from the very beginning to address a specific situation from the very basis. Therefore, you're challenging, let's say, like people say, the status quo. If you come, or your background designed into thinking like that, it gives you an advantage regarding today, where people are just told to think a certain way and not challenge anything.
That is true. And actually, when I came to university, day one, we had a little propaganda lecture. So it was an elderly dude. He didn't become quite a professor. He was like some Privatdozent, that's what he's called in German. And he was telling us, you guys, you physicists, you can do everything. You will be amazing. And I believed it for a while, until I found out that whatever you study in every country in the world, in every university, people will tell you that. But I still do say that physics, so kids, if you want to study something, study physics. It's very cool. So physics really prepares you to do a lot of things, because you are not, you don't attach to like a system. You are trained to understand every system and see parallels between systems and solve problems within the framework that you're in. So, good skill to have.
Now moving a little bit more into the artificial intelligence world. So just to understand, you became very interested in the artificial intelligence because of mathematics. Is there any correlation in today's age between physics and AI? Besides the mathematics background, let's say.
It's AI or machine learning. I use these terms interchangeably.
They're the same thing?
For me, they are the same thing. I mean, there might be in some literature subtle differences, but I don't think it's any different. It's just depending on the time you're in, you use one of the two terms. I personally think that mathematics and physics relate to statistics and machine learning. So it's like, well, putting it differently, like these is kind of an analogy. As a physicist, you're pragmatic. You have a problem, you want to solve it. You are not looking for exact and 100% correct solution. You are looking for solutions that are good enough. In machine learning, it's the same. You have a problem. You may have like some way of measuring success or measuring what good is, and you try to get as good as you possibly can. And therefore, I see physics and machine learning very, like, apart from mathematical, from a mindset, they are very, very strongly related. That's why also you have so many physicists going into artificial intelligence. But
do you think that's just because of the pragmatism inherent to it, or why do you? And this is my own preconception of the level. I've talked with a lot of people on AI, and some of the questions I'll have to ask you eventually, but the idea that artificial intelligence, you have a lot of physicists that come into it with just a physics background. And this is another preconception, that because you go to do one thing, you cannot jump onto the other one. But they seem to be, even though they're in the same realm of mathematics, they seem to be so many kingdoms apart that I don't see the correlation in why one would do the other beside. I don't know if I'm making myself understood right now.
I read a book, which was, it's called The Logic of Science by, I think it's a British guy, James, might be an American, I don't know exactly. It's an amazing book.
The Logic of Science.
The Logic of Science. It's a physicist that develops statistics from physics principles. And after I read this, this opened my eyes personally. Here we are back at a mathematical level. For like, you have certain, you have like two different realms that speak two different languages, but many of the core concepts are the same. In physics, you're optimizing energy. You look for minimizing the energy. In machine learning, you look for things like optimizing, minimizing the cost function, maximizing the profit, whatever you have at your target, as your target function. And this from a concept, you have a simple optimization problem. One time in physics, one time in machine learning. And if you really boil it down, the way of approaching these problems is extremely similar.
Okay, like we're saying, going through a pragmatic route and trying to. I'm very interested about this, because I never would have imagined, like I said, that there's clearly some misconception here or some preconception, but I didn't think there were many similarities, probably because of the way that I heard about machine learning. And I would like to touch up on something that you just said, is that for you, artificial intelligence and machine learning are almost synonyms.
Yes.
In terms of application, at least.
Yeah. For me, I understand them in the way I just described, as pragmatic ways of solving a problem based on maybe historic data.
And that's machine learning and artificial intelligence.
Yes. I mean, then there's like more, you can look more in detail. There's like deep learning, which, nowadays, is considered artificial intelligence. This was what this, Google, Go playing algorithm uses. And this is what like most people use nowadays. So, I mean, for me, as a guy like who's mathematically focused, this is just one, strategy of many that all, that all are in the big field of machine learning or artificial intelligence. I don't think it makes too much sense to focus on like the naming, because I have the feeling that machine learning, that was a term I used when I got into this field, is not very fashionable anymore. AI is a bit more sexy.
Funny thing that you mentioned, I've had this conversation with another artificial intelligence professional, and one of the things that I found a couple of weeks ago was a tweet by a guy that's saying, if you want to raise money, you say machine learning. If you want to hire developers, you say data science. If you want to talk to media, you say artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Which is kind of all in the same camp, but you need to target different people that can say and sell their own data and say, hey, I'm a data scientist. Oh, very well. Very well for you. Oh, I'm doing machine learning. Oh, here's my money. And artificial intelligence, people will say, you must be smart. You must be very smart.
Yeah, you should just know where to use what term. But I mean, I'm not an expert here, so I'm just thinking out loud, right? So, what I have been thinking about a lot is, what we call here augmented creativity. Machine learning to make, humans more creative in some way, as opposed to maybe artificial intelligence, which we see nowadays as some algorithms that automate tasks that humans would do otherwise. So maybe there is a difference. I don't know. After this conversation, we probably have to both Google it and figure this out.
So from conversations that I've had, what I seem to assume is that artificial intelligence is only possible through the machine learning algorithms that come before. Artificial intelligence, from what I understand, it's the actions that come from the data sets and the data interpretation from the machine learning and all the algorithms. So I wouldn't say personally that they are the same thing. I just seem that one cannot exist without the other, and one does not make sense just because you're interpreting data if you don't have any action that comes or precedes it. Okay,
yeah, fair enough.
So, and now that you already mentioned that we do here, and here we are in the DCMN offices, which are very, very different from what I'm used to in terms of the agency and marketing side. Before we go on to this, I would like to ask you, so you went from physics, theoretical physicist, to data science and all those things. And at one point, you moved to marketing. And from what I researched, you are a co-founder of a startup that did real-time advertising.
Exactly.
Why? First of all, why would you go from data science, a very profitable field, into marketing, which usually it's a race to the bottom in terms of pricing? When we're talking about a small business, at least.
Yeah. Okay.
Why would you?
So I mean, in the end, it's like your career is kind of shaped by the people you meet. So I started in the last year of my PhD. I figured that I want to learn more about this field of machine learning, because also in the end, I thought like, okay, PhD, now this is done. So I need a new thing. So I want to do a startup, but it's not something boring. I want to do something smart, something like with machine learning, with AI. And so I figured that as some guy from university, I cannot just start a company. We are not in Silicon Valley, and the Fritz Haber Institute is not Stanford. So I figured I have to learn something first. So back in the days, Zalando was hiring. They was hiring big time. They were hiring a lot of data scientists. Back in the day, still called quantitative analysts, because banking was still fashionable.
Zalando, you said banking was still fashionable.
So yeah, that's why they got the term quantitative analyst from. I think because Andreas, the guy who led the team, who's now the managing director of Zalando Media Solutions, he found quantitative analyst quite nice as a job title. Later, everyone was called data scientists. That's how the naming changed. And I went to Zalando, and for some reason, I found myself in a position where I was suddenly being kind of consultant to the marketing departments at Zalando. They were asking me, hey, we have this SEO algorithm. Does it work for us? Hey, we have to optimize this display campaigns. Can you help us with making some strategies? And so I found myself without any further plan sucked into this whole marketing world. And there I got to know a lot of smart people at Zalando. They really knew what they were doing. And so without ever planning it, I became an expert in marketing technology. And this led later then to founding Realzeit, a programmatic advertising tech company with two other physicists, actually. And that's where we are now. It got sold 2 years ago.
Congratulations.
To DC Man. And Christian, who's not a CTO here, Heiko, who is heavily involved in the data science work here. We're very happy to be at DC.
So just to understand, was it more of an acqui-hire? Was it an acquisition and then they poached you? What was the...
Well, we got acquired by DC Man, and definitely we are very valuable employees. But we are pushing the technology still forward, and we love it here. It's great, DC Man.
So for people at home who don't know what programmatic is, what's the best way of describing it?
Well, I mean, what we all think we know is trading at a stock market, right? Some goods are offered and other people virtually buy it. And the same thing happens for ad space. If a web page opens and you see like a little advertising there, a lot of things are happening. The web page asks some ad exchange, for example, Google, to fill the ad spot with advertising. Mm-hmm. Google will ask its partners. We would be one of the partners, companies that have strategies of buying media after some goals, and we would figure out, okay, we're willing to pay so much for this advertising. If it's shown to the user, we send it back to Google. Google takes it, sends it to the ad. This is all happening in 100 milliseconds. This is like, it's quite interesting, actually. You are kind of saying marketing is not so interesting, so I
come from a marketing background. What I'm saying is that usually when people come from a physics background or even come from a different area from marketing, for example, I am very passionate for marketing because of the storytelling side. Mm-hmm. I always found it fascinating that Apple was able to get people so blindly passionate about products without even saying anything sometimes. Mm-hmm. And I went to marketing because of that. But people that come from a tech background usually go to marketing because of the interesting things, analytics, how to think strategically or in a mathematical level. But when we think about it, marketing, at the end of the day, it's a race to the bottom in terms of pricing usually, because unless you're dealing with big, huge clients, when we're talking about mom and pop shops, usually it's a race to the bottom who gets the lowest prices.
It might be true. But I'll tell you the good thing about it. You must imagine there are three physicists. They're like, we were like around 30 then. One, Christian, was a bit more of an, experienced entrepreneur. He had already founded, I think, 3 companies, and he was very driven and very, very, a developer. Like he's, in his heart, he's a software developer. And, Heiko and I, we were like super mathematical, like up there in the clouds, like wanting to do like really nice formulas and calculate things analytically, stuff like this. And we were sitting there having a beer at the balcony of Christian's apartment, and we were like thinking, okay, what do we want to do? Like, we want to do like found a company, but what about? And Christian was like, okay, it needs to be like high tech. It needs to be super complicated. We need high performance computing and so on. And Heiko and I were more on the side where like, yeah, it needs to be like, we need to definitely do machine learning. It needs to be smart. And in this programmatic advertising, this trading with ad spaces, we actually found exactly this. It's an extremely complicated technical infrastructure that you need, but also you collect a lot of data and make smart decision based on this. So for us, it's actually like a perfect mix between what we wanted. And so this is exactly how we ended up here.
Interesting. So then you got acquired and now you're working at DCMN.
Yes, exactly.
Let's talk now specifically about DCMN. What is it?
Basically we will help our clients to grow in multiple ways. We do this by media buying, but we also do this by creation and production. We are present in TV advertising. We do radio advertising. We do digital advertising. We do strategy consultancy to companies. We do workshop where we train startups to do marketing. So we are basically doing everything to help companies grow.
That are almost like an agency / consultancy company within the digital communication space. Is that it?
Well, it's not only digital. Linear TV advertising. This is
communication space. Then let's take out the digital.
Yeah, why not?
Okay, and you lead the product and innovation here at DCMN, and you mentioned something a couple of minutes ago about AI to help creation and help creativity. Correct?
Yes, exactly. So the main idea is we try to use machine learning for everything, and companies that are really good in automation and machine learning and provide a real value, they are immensely successful. But they are also everywhere. Like companies like Google and Facebook, they've taken over the digital world like crazily, And we have been thinking, we love the topic. We love machine learning. We love it from a philosophical standpoint. And we were wondering actually, how can we bring this efficiency that we know from, for example, media buying, how can we bring this to the creation process? Why did this process not change in the last, 30 years? And it's very difficult. It's a very, very difficult process. It's very difficult to measure what actually happens. Mm-hmm. So in the end, you have a couple of really smart, very creative people that have crazy ideas. And they discuss based on whatever client briefing they get and come out with ideas. And it's like throughout the process, how can you measure if an idea is good or not?
Throughout the process?
Yeah, after the process. How can you say that this is really, really a good advertising? Let's say a TV spot. How can you say it's a good TV spot? You go, maybe you're on a pitch. You come up with a crazy idea and you know it's good. You have a gut feeling. And you show it to the client.
Manager or something.
Yeah. And the client doesn't like it. How do you convince him that this is a good idea? This is impossible. It's very, very difficult to measure. The only way of measuring this, and this is done by more traditional agencies, and also we offer this as well, of course, is some spot testing, maybe like some A/B testing. Is this spot better than the other? And
questionnaires, trying test groups,
exactly. But it's expensive. It takes long. It's sometimes not clear what comes out of this. So we were wondering about this, how can we make this measurable? What can we do? How can we automate things? How can we use technology to make this process better? And this is where we're at right now.
So, you're in this process, but how do you think? Okay, let me try and put myself in that situation. So, is the idea that you can, as the ideas come up, you put it into a test valve that it creates the possibility of this working is 65%. Is it something like that? When is the AI applicable? Because is it something that just randomizes words and then gives people ideas from those words? Does it create a full-blown idea? Where are we in this AI for creation?
Well, when you read through marketing blogs or marketing magazines. You every once in a while you find some interesting article. Creative agency XY has written a TV spot with AI, and then you see a video of some random people saying incoherent sentences. And it's like, whoa, this is it. This is like, wow, AI written spot. And everybody thinks, yeah, nice marketing stunt. Good. Let's close the magazine and let's go home. But Creative XY is amazing. They do great stuff. And we have read these things and we thought, wow, that would be, if you really could do this, if you really could from scratch write a TV spot, the full thing. It tells you who is in there, how they look, what they do, would be amazing. You know, you need to be a bit of a megalomaniac when you think about these things. We very quickly found out in the discussions. I mean, we discussed this with the creative department. We had a couple of mathematically affine guys here, and we quickly found out that this is probably not easy. It's very difficult. It needs a lot of resources. We don't know what gets out of there, and we found out that being creative is actually not the biggest problem. Our guys who sit one story above us, they have one great idea after the other. The problem they have is not to generate these ideas. The problem they have is to convince the client clients that these ideas are good. And so this is what we focused on then. So, and this is why we speak from augmented creativity. We let people be creative, but we want to automatically validate their ideas and say, well, this might be according to your target group. We use, I don't know, this character because, and that's a much smaller problem. It's not as big as writing the whole thing, but it will eventually be one small part in a large process where we try to automate and support every step that we can.
So the artificial intelligence here is more of a support, like you said.
Yes.
You have the creatives that create the idea, and then you have like an ongoing validation tool. But what's the percentage of that it gets right?
I mean,
there's no right or wrong usually.
There is no right or wrong, and to be honest, this is something we are working on. We are still testing, we're still tweaking. It shows interesting results, but it's not something that we present to the public yet. And we have to see if it's used. I mean, that's basically in the end, it needs to be used by our creative team. It needs to be accepted by the client. And once we have reached this, we will bring this out to the public and can also hopefully have like a successful case study with numbers. But we are not there yet. This is very complicated things that we are trying to build, that we are trying to tackle. And this is more like a very long project.
And do you think that the idea for this project specifically, is it to only be used internally by DCMN, or is it the idea to eventually license it and sell to another agencies?
I mean, what we want to do is very like in a general thing. We want to help our clients grow, and the easiest way to help them grow is to enable them to do so. And so everything that we build is with our clients in mind. So we do not think about building tools for other agencies or whatever. Yeah. What we will actually do later, this depends how we can enter the market, who will use this tool, how they will use it, and and what exactly we are doing. As I said, this is still in research. These questions we'll figure out later.
No, I'm just asking this because that I don't want to meddle in your business at any point. I'm just wondering.
Any tip, we're open.
I'm just thinking that if this actually grows inside, so you're building this and inside DCMN you're seeing very positive things. Then you start to toy around with something that might be next to your own, but not necessarily competition, and you see that that's applicable to a different industry. So you're working with non-direct competition, but it's seen that there's value there. And even with their feedback, you can iterate and build something even better because you only saw your application for your own use case. And eventually you can have a very, very solid product that can be valuable on a larger scale. And I don't know. Once again, I don't want to meddle in your business. I'm just thinking because artificial intelligence is something that I find it really interesting. I don't know where artificial intelligence will grow to. But I think that if you're able to, when we were saying automizing, I think you said it best, it's augmenting creativity. It's not necessarily replacing it, because if you were replacing creativity, I would run out of here scared out of my mind. Yeah. Because people still say that, even Jack Ma from Alibaba says that you won't be able to compete with computers. So you have to be creative, you have to work on other things. Now, if you're telling me that a computer can be creative, I don't see why I should still be living, because that's scary as fuck. So what I was saying is that if you're able to augment creativity, you can apply that to different businesses, different industries, different use cases. And that can also be a very profitable, if it works, of course, very profitable other side source of income for even DCMN.
I mean, that would be a dream scenario, and I think everyone at DCMN would be more than happy to expand such a thing into different verticals. However, thinking about this at this stage, in my opinion, is a bit early, but yeah, why not? For us, this is more like a proof of concept thing. And what we are currently, we try to identify where we could support the creative process with technology, where we could best and most efficiently augment the creativity of our creation department. And this might be what I just explained. Mm-hmm. This is something that...
It's ongoing, like I said.
But it might also be something different. It might be multiple things. We'll see.
And touching up on that, what do you mean by creation here? In what kind of application is that? Does it read text and understand what you're giving it in terms of information and data? Do you also give it storyboards? Do you give it some design things? What kind of data do you give it?
You know, the simplest is to stick to things that are already pretty well researched and build upon them. And pretty well researched are two things. It's image recognition and text recognition. And these are like the two basics of our tool and of our ideas. And most successful at the moment, we are with approaches from text recognition, where we compare texts that we have automatically created with target group affinities and interests that we pass from blogs and YouTube videos and whatever. So
okay. Well, I've got to say that if that comes to fruition, I think that you have a very, very, very interesting product there. And congratulations, I think it's remarkable. And using artificial intelligence in a different way, in an area that I never thought I would see so close. I mean, I've worked in the programmatic area. I know the milliseconds, microseconds, going for the best solution on the cheapest price for the buyer. But I never thought of using artificial intelligence even before that.
Yeah, it's like
before buying the content, but using artificial intelligence during the creation of the content itself.
Yeah, what I have to say, it's like for me as a person interested in such topics from afar, I read about them, I like them. It is just amazing to be able and to have the support of a company like DCMN to be able to work in such an interesting field. I do not know where else we would have this opportunity, and that is great. So I mean, that's why everybody here is like highly motivated and happy that we can tackle what we consider one of the biggest questions and biggest problems currently in marketing. Let's put it.
I've got to say that it's not very easy to leave me speechless. I'm someone who likes to talk, and the the possibilities that I can envision here just during our talk. I think that the possibilities are endless. And congratulations there. I think that you have a very interesting idea. I have one question for you now, still on artificial intelligence, but not applicable to DCMN specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Regarding artificial intelligence, in which camp are you? Zuckerberg or Elon Musk?
Well, I mean, both characters are a bit difficult. I think from ideas and from a philosophical standpoint, I would be I feel a bit closer to Elon Musk. Because
so do you think that artificial intelligence will eventually be able to bring our destruction of the human race?
Okay. Well, no, I don't think so. There's always a bit fear about new things, and there's always fear about very drastic changes. But in the end, I think it's very hard to measure things like artificial intelligence with human standards, human ethics, and I currently don't see like this evil intelligent thing that we are used to from movies. Mm-hmm. Like this is kind of a very dystopian idea of the future that I cannot believe in. Maybe I'm too optimistic for this. However, I'm though not with Mark Zuckerberg, because I really don't like how he treats the data of its users. So don't put me in the Zuckerberg camp.
Well, the main thing for me is that, objectively speaking, we can assume that the human race is kind of a virus for planet Earth. Correct? We're burning resources faster than we can put them back, and we actively kill more species than any other species before. There's actually a trend that the longer the human stays at one place, the faster it kills native species. What can you consider nowadays native species? I don't know, but there's actually a graph that correlates that. If you start creating artificial intelligence to, let's say, agriculture, and you give them permission to kill what it's killing off the crops, an argument can be made that a machine can say, this person is fucking up the crops, so this person must be eliminated. And from that point on to another point, it's not that big a jump. Does that make sense?
I know, I understand where you're going, yeah.
Because it's logic.
Yeah.
Whether we like it or not, human people are scumbags. We build stuff, we kill each other. We are not the best thing ever created. Not even the most intelligent one.
So let's try to translate this for me. What you're saying is, if you put a kind of optimization function into an algorithm or an intelligent machine, this optimization might contradict to leaving humans alive, and eventually, when there's like some security mechanism not working, this will lead to the machines taking over. This is like the argument.
I think that it's not reasonable not to think about it, at least, because I think that it's so far ahead right now that it's hard to even muster the energy to think about it. But if we think about what was the world 15 years ago, 15 years ago, we didn't have Facebook yet. Nowadays, we have drones in hot air balloons giving Wi-Fi to villages in Africa. The technology space is growing up so rapidly, so fast, that we don't know how hard things will change and how whirly and twisty things will be. And the argument that I'm making here, and talking with you necessarily, I'm not saying that it's like a devil's advocate here. I don't know where I'm standing, but objectively speaking, even when we talk about algorithms protecting people, whoever writes the algorithm has inherent preconceptions and things that he or she might think about one specific area, and he or she might give more weight into one specific thing rather than the other.
Well, I'm not sure if this will end in this very drastic way that people have in mind in their darkest fear, but I agree with you on to some extent. When we trust algorithms like deep learning algorithms to drive our cars or do anything, we have to be aware that these algorithms have, in a controlled environment, shown, I don't know, some behavior, but there are no simple rules that we can extract from the code, from the algorithms, that will help us foresee what will happen in every situation. This is just the mathematics in between is too complicated, too nonlinear for us to predict every situation based on the algorithm. And that's a bit difficult. So we are moving away from a world where in principle we can understand everything because everything is under well-defined rules, to a world where we stop being able to understand everything, at least what we build, because the things we build are so complex that it may be mathematically impossible to understand all implications. And that is kind of worrying. And I am not fully sure how to tackle this. I guess nobody is. And this is a topic that definitely needs to be discussed. And I'm pretty sure something will happen much earlier than before we have a machine killing humans because they are against the environment.
When you say, sorry to interrupt, when you say something, what do you mean by something here?
Wait, what did I say? Something?
You said something will happen much earlier.
Yes, something will happen much earlier. I was going to say that when autonomous cars will enter the roads, the lawmakers and politicians and judges and philosophers and everyone has to go back to the drawing board together and figure out the scenario and see what is the best thing to do.
How autonomous car runs over a person who's to blame.
Exactly. And these solving these problems, these smaller problems, will lead us eventually to a larger solution how we can deal with artificial intelligence. And this is something we have to tackle in the next 10 years. I think we will be forced to find a solution to how to deal with artificial intelligence and machines that may be even smarter for some use cases than humans in the next years. Yeah.
I love technology. Okay, I would like to ask you a couple more questions before we enter the interview. So first of all, we're now going to do some rapid fire questions. Rapid fire questions are really simple. I'll ask you one question and then you have less than 1 minute to answer.
Okay. All right.
Tell me one book that has impacted your life the most.
The most? This is very difficult. I cannot answer this because I would have to think a bit longer. What I've been reading recently is Competing Against Luck from Christensen. It's some framework. Yes, exactly. It's a framework of how to be innovative, and it's extremely simple. It's an easy read, and every page you think, he's right. And that's something that helped me judge what I'm doing at my work. So that's a good book. It's not what changed my life, but it changed me in the last couple of months.
Since you mentioned the last couple of months, tell me something that has changed your opinion in the last 6 months.
Oh, that is an interesting question. I was not prepared for this. I do not have a proper answer to this. What has changed my opinion a lot is we have changed at GCMN. We've changed completely our way of structuring the company. We have got rid of all hierarchies, and we have a completely new way of how teams work together. Before this, I had a certain assumption about people, how they work in teams, how you have to organize a team. This definitely changed my perception of how people work together and how people act in their roles.
So before we say goodbye, I'd like to ask a couple more questions. First of all, where can people find more about you and get in touch with you?
Well, I guess I'm Googleable. I'm on LinkedIn, but the good thing is October 25th is coming in. It's a Scale conference. It's a growth marketing conference with really amazing topics. It's about the future of marketing, the future of work, ad tech, and there is also something with ICOs. And I will give a speech there about how I'll see our job in marketing changing in the next 20 years. So it might be interesting for you.
So for someone out there who's here in Berlin or is planning to come here to Berlin, 25th of October, correct?
Yes.
The whole day, scale18.co, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Scale18.co, you'll be able to talk with me, talk with Markus, of course. You're Googleable, of course, you already mentioned, and everything will be written here on the show notes. One last thing, can you want to give a little bit more of a glimpse of what you're going to be during your talk?
Well, I have been thinking a lot about how the world of advertising has been changing in the last 20 years. It has been crazy. Google opened its doors September 20 years ago. So many things have changed. And I thought about what will happen in the next 20 years. And preparing for this talk, I found that small changes that are not so impressive now that we already expect, clumped together, provide already a very, very good image of what will happen. And these are automation, AI, and I will also talk about augmented creativity a bit, how they play together and how they will change our job. So that's my topic. Yeah.
Well, it was a pleasure having you here on the Pioneers Show, and just call out for everyone who's listening to this episode. If you are in Berlin, please stop by. It's going to be a great event, and I can't wait to have you people listen to Markus here. Thank you for being here on the Pioneers Show.
Awesome, thanks. Well, fun.
Thank you so much for plugging into this episode. I truly hope you loved this conversation as much as I did. Markus is hella smart, and I really enjoyed our conversation. The very, very nice people at DCMN were kind enough to provide us with a 20% discount to the event with the promo code PioneersX Scale18. Once again, PIONEERS XSCALE18. You can find this and any other information that you might have missed on the show notes. If you enjoy this conversation, consider subscribing to make sure that this podcast grows. We can get to more people and help everyone be the pioneers of their lives and careers. Also, if there's any feedback that you might have for me, reach out on social media. A big thank you for Markus for his time and for Christian for arranging this great conversation. And to Thibaut Flonlin, aka DJ Rodia, for the new music of the Pioneers Show.